All right, guys, welcome to Persistence Playbook. And it's just me and you today, no guest. We are going to run down a list of 10 for anyone who's been listening to this show since its onset in January 2023. Wow, we've been going at this almost 2 years, by the way, gang. Good for us. If anyone who's been listening since way back then in the beginning of Persistence Playbook, you know that when it's just me sitting down with the microphone, I love me a good list. And who doesn't, right? I mean, whether it's an article, a blog post, a podcast, a YouTube video, I like my information to come in list form. I just do. And I hope you do as well. So today we are going to be talking about an absolutely crucial skill when it comes to persistence and when it comes to achieving your goals and doing big things and making the most out of your life. Probably the most important skill we can have is the ability to make and keep promises to ourselves, right? It's crucial for building self-trust and resilience. And we're going to go through 10 ways to get better at it because truthfully, gang, at the end of the day, there's no way that we're going to make an extraordinary impact in this lifetime unless we get this skill right. Unless we can say to ourselves, I am going to go to the gym. I am going to work on that business plan. I am going to call that person. I am going to do that follow up and then actually do those things. Then I'm sorry, then we have no chance of achieving the large aspirations that I know you have and that I know I have for our lives. So, we're going to start this list right now. We're going to start with number one, as we always do on a countdown show. And the first way to get better at keeping promises to ourselves is to start small. And the reason for this is because setting too ambitious of a goal can lead to failure, which undermines our confidence. So, what we need to be doing is just beginning as small as possible, manageable promises like waking up 10 minutes earlier, maybe drinking 64 ounces of water. That first time that we set promises, that we make promises for ourselves, let's really make sure that they're promises that we're confident that we can keep. We don't want to stretch ourselves too much in the beginning because if we make a list of 15 promises and then we only get 2 done, we didn't help ourselves. We actually hurt ourselves in that process because we are lessening our self-trust. We're lessening that self-integrity, and we are not going to trust ourselves to go out there and do what we set forth tomorrow. So if we're starting tomorrow, then what I want you to do is either with a pen and paper, or maybe it's your to-do list, I want you to write down 2 to 3 promises. And I want you to phrase them as a promise, right? There's a difference between a to-do and a promise. To me, a to-do list is for things that we're going to do our best to get done if we can squeeze them in. And if we don't squeeze them in, then we'll try and get them done tomorrow. But to me, a promise, an I will list actually is what I like to call it. And I like to keep my tasks and my promises in 2 separate lists. I have 2 separate to-do list apps on my phone home screen, which I know sounds completely insane, but it works for me and it might work for you. So give it a shot. And on the one are my tasks, my to-dos, the things I'd like to get done today, the more kind of urgent stuff that popped up at the last second that, you know what, I really should get done today. And I'm going to do my best to get everything done on that list. And then there's the other app. And that is my I will list. And when I put something in that app of promises, and I say, I will do a strength exercise today. I say, I will reach out to 10 guests to try and book them on a future podcast. When I put a promise in that application, it's ingrained and it's then tied to my integrity. So it's different than a to-do. It's more important. Those are my really high level tasks that are going to push the ball forward on my mission. But I think when we're getting started with those I will tasks, when we're getting started with those keep your promise tasks, let's start small. Maybe you could make it, I will call my father, or I will take out the garbage, or I will run 1 mile on the treadmill. I mean, I think you still want to push yourself a little bit, right? Like just make yourself go 10% more than you normally would. Push yourself a little bit outside your comfort zone with the initial promise day, but don't go nuts. Make sure they're things you know you can do. They're just not things that maybe you would have done if you didn't frame them as a promise. All right, guys, motoring down the list is number 2. And we kind of just touched on this a moment ago. It's write down those promises, right? Because writing creates clarity and commitment. And our brain needs clarity if it's going to figure out a way to act on these promises, right? So writing them down, either using a journal or an app on your phone, like I do, to track our promises and progress is going to be absolutely pivotal. Now, there is some science out there that says that we're more likely to do things that we do freehand, that we write out with our actual pen, paper, and hands. Myself, I find if I do that, if I write things out freehand, then they just kind of get left on my desk. And sometimes I forget about them. I prefer to put them in my phone because I know my phone's on me all day long. I know when I open that home screen and I see that little notification tab above my Promise app, above my I Will app. And by the way, the app I use for that is called Tick Tick, not TikTok. TikTok is definitely not going to help you be more productive. It's not going to help you keep promises. It's going to distract you and you're going to doom scroll for an hour and a half. And it's going to make it less likely that you keep your promises. So we don't want to open TikTok. And I would say push TikTok off your home screen, push that to the back of the app line, so to speak. It's called Tick Tick. It's a really nice to-do list app. I like it a lot. And for me, I use it as my I Will list app. That's more of the app that I use when I'm making promises. The other app I use for to-do lists is just an app called Things. It's another really, just simple to use kind of task app. I think that's the best way to say it, right? So anyway, let's make sure we write down our promises, because if we don't write them down, if we keep them up in our head, it's easy to forget about them. Just by writing them down on a pad or putting them in an app on your phone, it makes them much more real. It makes them much more tangible. And we have to deal with those promises. At that point, they're there. We know they're there. We know we made this promise and we have the choice, keep it or don't keep it. All right, guys, number 3 way to get better at that so pivotal skill of making and keeping promises is to set clear, specific goals, right? Because vague goals lead to confusion and procrastination. Instead, we want to be much more concise. Instead of saying exercise more, instead of saying I will exercise today, let's say I will go for a 30-minute walk. That's a promise. That is an exact, specific promise that our brain can recognize and actually take action on, right? The more specific we are with our promises, the more likely we are to actually bring them into fruition and make them part of our day. So instead of saying, I will do follow-up, say, I will follow up with 5 potential prospects, right? Instead of saying, I will work on that business plan, say, I will work on that business plan for 25 minutes of focused work. That would be a Pomodoro, by the way, for all of my productivity nerds. A Pomodoro would be a unit of focused work where basically you set a timer and you just throw some focus at a project. I think this is a great way to kind of start a project, kind of get the ball rolling on something that you have no clue what the hell to do, right? Like, let's say you want to start an online course. You want to build an online course, but you have no clue actually what that entails. Just set a Pomodoro and just make a promise to yourself to say, I am going to work on my online course for 1 Pomodoro. And you set that timer for 25 minutes and you just work on that course. Maybe it's doing research. Maybe it's writing an outline. Maybe it's just getting more clear on what the topic is going to be. Maybe it's watching a course on how to make courses. Yes, that's a thing, by the way. They have courses on how to make courses. Whatever it is, you are just going to be laser focused on making that course for 25 minutes. And you'd be surprised. You'll actually get a lot done in 25 minutes without any distractions. And the beauty of the Pomodoro is 25 minutes is just a manageable amount of time. Like, I think that if you tell someone that they have to focus on a new task for 50 minutes, they might be a little scared. That sounds kind of terrifying, right? Because that's a long period of time to stay laser focused on anything in this, social media age. But 25 minutes, if you really kind of keep your head down, grin and bear it, grit your teeth and just make it happen, you can focus on anything for 25 minutes. So give Pomodoros a shot. I think that they are a really valuable tool for productivity. All right, guys, hammering down the list Number 4 way to get better at making and keeping promises to yourself is to create some accountability. Now, the reason that this is important is because accountability helps maintain discipline and follow through. I mean, human accountability is an unbelievably powerful tool. So basically, you just want to share your goals with a friend, a family member, or an accountability group. I know for myself, I have a mastermind group that I meet with once a month, 2 other entrepreneurs in different fields, but I really just respect them. I respect their level of productivity, their level of business. I respect their character. I think it's important when you form these groups to really form them with people that you really respect, because if you tell them on July 1st that I will do these 5 things, you do not want to show up on August 1st not having done those things, because you respect these people, and in tow, you want them to respect you back. And they're going to respect you a lot more if you keep your promises to yourself and to the group. So make sure to utilize that human accountability in some way, shape, or form, because human accountability cannot be undervalued. Overvalued. I think I wanted to say overvalued there. You know what I mean. All right, guys. Next up is number 5, and we want to use visual reminders, right? And the reason we want to do this is because visual cues reinforce commitment. And the way that we're going to utilize this is that basically by placing sticky notes with your promise in place, with your promise in a place that you frequently look, right? Like your mirror or a computer, or for me, it's my phone, right? Because I've got it on my to-do list app, and I see I see that number of notifications that pops up on these to-do list apps. When you've got an undone to do, it'll tell you how many tasks you have for the day right above it on your home screen. So when I know that I've made 5 promises to myself, but I've only kept 2 of them so far today, then on that app, there's going to be a number 3 above it. And I'm going to know, okay, I got 3 more promises to keep today if I'm going to keep my self-integrity intact. So use visual reminders in some way, shape, or form. Maybe it's a sticky note on your desk, whatever it is. Let's make sure that that we are using visual reminders so that we don't forget about our promises, right? We don't want to make them at 9 a.m., forget about them by 11 a.m., drift through our day, and then remember at like 10 p.m. as we're about to go to bed, like, oh, crap. I said I was going to, go for a run. And instead I binge watched, Netflix or something like that, right? I love how Netflix, by the way, always gets the bad rap of killing everyone's productivity, right? Like it's always like either you're starting a business or you're watching Netflix. And I just want to tell you guys, you can do both. You can be incredibly successful and you can still watch an hour of TV before you go to bed. Like a lot of really successful people do it. I've had over, I think, around 70 incredibly successful entrepreneurs on my podcast. And I gotta be honest with you, a lot of them still make time for stuff like that. You don't have to be productive every single hour of the day. It's okay to watch a little Netflix. Just don't take it overboard. All right, guys. Number 6 is break big promises into smaller steps. And the reason that we do this is because large promises can be overwhelming. If we just write down, I am going to have, or I will post, 100 times this quarter on social media, that could be a little bit overwhelming. But if we break that down into how many posts it is per week and how many per day, then you chunk it down into a fashion where your brain can kind of go, okay, I can do that. But if you just make that promise way too big, it's going to overwhelm us. And a lot of times when we're overwhelmed by the promises we make to ourselves, then we just throw our hands up in the sky and we walk away and we get nothing done. And that is not what we want to do. So let's say if your promise is, I will write a book by the end of the year, let's chunk that down into, I will write 300 words daily. Let's make it smaller. Smaller steps are attainable. Big promises that are not broken down into smaller steps are very unlikely to be kept. All right, guys, hammering down the list. And by the way, we are talking about how to make and keep promises to yourself. And the number 7 way to do so is to reward yourself. Reward is a very, very important, pivotal, and valuable way to motivate yourself to keep going, right? Rewards create positive reinforcement. It's that simple. And the way we do this is simply treat yourself to something small when you've kept all your promises. If you made 5 promises today and you kept every single one of those things, then hell yeah, you deserve a treat, doggy. You deserve it. Sorry, I didn't mean to call you doggy. I was just got caught up in the moment there, but you know what I mean. We deserve a little treat because we worked hard to keep our promises to ourselves. Hell yeah, pat yourself on the back. Maybe go down to Dairy Queen and have yourself a Blizzard. By the way, my personal Blizzard favorite is vanilla ice cream with a mix of Butterfinger and Reese's peanut butter cups. I had a friend, Claire, who kind of shoved me in that direction of Blizzard. And let me tell you, that is the pinnacle of dessert. There's nothing better on this planet, dessert wise, than a vanilla Blizzard with Butterfinger and Reese's peanut butter cups. Just try it before you deny it. All right, guys. Hammering down the list. We're already at number 8. I'm kind of sad. We're almost at 10. We're almost done with this list, but I hope you're getting a lot out of it. And the number 8 way to get better at keeping promises to ourselves is, yes, to practice self-compassion, right? Because being overly critical can also lead us to give up. If you slip up, forgive yourself, then get back on track without harsh judgment. Because at the end of the day, you're a human being. And that's cool. We're not perfect. That's kind of the beauty of being a human being, right? We're not machines. We're not a promise keeping robot. Sometimes we're going to overextend ourselves. Sometimes we're going to say, I will work out. And then you're going to get to the end of the day and maybe you got 2 kids and you only slept for 3 hours last night and you're freaking exhausted and you're just going to decide in that moment to not keep that promise. And that's okay. That's all right. You be kind to yourself in that moment, understanding of the situation you were in, but then we also make a commitment to be better in the future. And when that comes up again, when that circumstance comes up again, when we made a promise to ourselves and we're feeling tired and we don't want to do it, then in that moment, we do our best to be better. In that future moment, we do our best to keep that promise. But if we're looking in the rearview mirror and we didn't keep a promise and we're getting down on ourselves, then that's not helping. That's not helping us be our best self. That's not helping us make a great impact on the world around us. So practice some self-compassion with this, guys. You're not going to keep every promise. I'm telling you that right now. But if you keep most of them, if you keep 8 out of 10, if you keep 9 out of 10, then you can live an extraordinary life. All right, guys, the number 9 way to get better at making and keeping promises to ourselves is to establish a routine, right? Because habits reduce decision fatigue and make promise keeping automatic. And I think the way that we do this is we just set consistent times for certain tasks like daily reading or meditation. If we have a promise that we want to make to ourselves that I will read a chapter a day, then we got to know when that's going to happen, right? Because we live busy lives. We're running businesses, we're raising children, we're working out. And we got to know when this promise is actually going to happen in our calendar. And the best way to do that is with a routine. Maybe it's the first thing you do when you wake up. You wake up, you pour yourself a cup of Java or a cup of tea, and you just sit down with a book and you read that chapter. Or maybe it's right before you go to bed. Maybe that's the best time where you can carve out that learning activity. But whatever it is, with these habit promises specifically, like meditation or daily reading, try and find that point in your day. Maybe it's first thing in the morning. Maybe it's right before you go to bed. Maybe it's at lunch when you can consistently get that promise done. All right, guys, we're at the end of the list. I'm so sad, but I'm also happy because I think we got a lot done here. And I think that we are talking about an incredibly important skill. That skill is making and keeping promises to ourselves. Because if we want to do extraordinary things, guys, this is the skill we need to make a priority. All right. The number 10 way to get better at this skill is to review and reflect regularly, right? We got to look back if we're going to look forward. And the regular reflection just helps you assess progress and adjust where necessary. So how we do this is set weekly or monthly check-ins with yourself to review how well you're keeping your promises. And the beauty of that Tick app, by the way, is that you can kind of look back day by day on your promises. Did I keep my promises every day this week? How many did I not keep? And then think to yourself, okay, on Tuesday, I made 5 promises to myself. And I didn't keep any of them. Like, why did that happen? And kind of like do some detective work. Maybe it's because you stayed up late the night before watching TV. You didn't get a great night's rest. So your willpower was lower than it should have been. And you didn't do anything that you wanted to do. Or maybe it's because, you went out drinking for Monday Night Football and then you got up Tuesday, didn't keep any of your promises to yourself. Try and find what those speed bumps are, what those roadblocks are, because there are things in your life that are preventing you from keeping the promises that you make to yourself. And the more that we reflect on our weeks and our days, the more we can kind of pick out these little roadblocks, these things that are preventing us from being our best self. And we can just slowly but surely kind of prune them out of our lives so that we have no obstructions to making and keeping promises and to being our best self, to realizing our full potential in this life, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. That was 10 ways to get better at this all important skill of making and keeping promises to ourselves. I'm Brett McDermott. This has been Persistence Playbook. And this is your weekly reminder that you will feel resistance to the important things, to the hard things in your life that you should be doing this week. Acknowledge that resistance. It's real. It's not fake. It's there. Acknowledge that resistance. Think about your why. Why are you doing these hard things? Lean into that why. Leverage that why, and then do the hard thing. Take action in spite of the resistance. I'm Brett McDermott. This has been Persistence Playbook, and we will catch you next week. Bye, guys.